So back in, I think, 2018, I was looking at New York City's laws, and they they identify 31 genders, but the law explicitly states infinite genders exist because it defines gender expression as self-expression. And so they say that you can't discriminate in public accommodations based on the clothing a person wears, the name they go by. And if that's the case, what is the legal limit? So I asked a human rights lawyer, and they said, well, obviously there's a reasonableness expectation in the law. The assumption is with this law, it's if a person is transgender, they're discernibly male but wearing a dress, you can't fire them. If they're discernibly male but going by the name Susan, you can't fire them. And so I asked a couple of human rights lawyers, if somebody went to Starbucks and applied for a job, then showed up on day one in a fursuit, and they called themselves Vociferon, Herald of the Winter Mists, would Starbucks be able to fire them for this? And they said, yes, of course, that's ridiculous. And I said, well, why can't they sue under that very same law that is their gender expression? And what I was told was a judge would laugh them out of the courtroom. And then I said, what if the judge doesn't like trans people and laughs at the man in a dress? What's the difference? And they didn't have an answer.
Well, and the case that established a lot of this is that Harris Funeral Home case from just a few years ago, in which we're talking about a funeral home here. So the customers at funeral homes are very, very vulnerable. They're grieving their loved ones. And there was this dude who decided that he wants to be a chick. And so he started wearing skirts to work. And the owner of the funeral home said, hey, man, I don't know what you're getting into, but you've got to have some respect for the mourners.
Skirts are not appropriate.
Skirts
are
not appropriate. This isn't about you, man. This is about the people who are mourning. And he sued him, went all the way up to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court decided that man's sexual fetish was more important than people's right to mourn in a respectable environment.
But think about how crazy this is. If you have a funeral home, the issue is not that we don't like that you're wearing a dress. I mean, kilts exist. They're similar in a certain respect. But we're talking about you respecting someone whose loved one died, and there's formal attire requirements. With New York City's law, they've basically abolished uniforms. It says you can't discriminate based on what someone wears in public accommodation. So if I show up at Starbucks wearing a clown costume, let's just be reasonable. I'll show up wearing jeans and a t-shirt and say, you can't make me wear those clothes because those are man clothes.
Yeah.
They can't do anything about it. The astounding thing, however, to me was, and this was honestly a big revelation for me in understanding law, a judge will laugh a person out of a courtroom. And then I said, then there will be many judges who are going to see a man wearing a dress and laugh and say, get out of my courtroom. This is ridiculous. Where's the line? And what I was told is, well, judges make those determinations. That they're the human interpretation of the law. And then I went, interesting. The law doesn't matter. The only thing that does is the culture. If the culture tolerates men and women cross-dressing in public, then the judge will defend it. If the culture tolerates fursuits, the judge will defend it. And right now it seems the fursuit goes over the line. But I'd say in 3 or 4 years,
of course,
you will see people in full fursuits at Starbucks serving your coffee.
Of course. And notice when you say we've now got the abolition of uniforms, this is always the result of these kind of leftist policies that is specifically focused on trans right now, but all of these leftist policies is this constant leveling and lowering down and abolition of standards. So the answer that people give, the middle ground on the bathrooms, is what you said earlier, which is, well, let's just all have unisex bathrooms and we'll just all have individual bathrooms. What's the answer on the sports teams? Oh, we'll all just have our own sports teams or something. What's the answer on, and so what happens is we all just become this undifferentiated androgynous consumer. That's all we do. All we are now is I don't want to sound like a commie or something, but this is being pushed not just by the leftist activists, it's being pushed by the entire liberal establishment and by corporate America and the whole power structure, which is just to take away all the ornamentation, all the differentiation, all the natural, lovely diversity of life and make us all just a bunch of blobs to buy a bunch of hormones and purchase their products.
And uniform actually means the same. One form. That's what uniform is for, is to make all the same. So they're stripping away the communist sameness of everything to create a weird world to then reconfigure it so that everyone...
Well, yeah, instead of having different kinds of uniforms in different areas of life for men and women, now it's literally we will just be uniform, undifferentiated blobs plugged into our computers and living in the metaverse and eating bugs.